tuned into Recovery TV, the voice of hope, with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Discussions and information on addiction and mental health issues. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Thank you for joining Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Narcan. Pick it up, put it in your pocket, put it in your purse. It saves lives. Narcan. My guest today is Beth Lamar from NAMI. So welcome, Beth, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us what NAMI is.
NAMI is the state organization of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we are an organization that provides support, education, and advocacy efforts around mental health.
Age group wise, 5 to 94?
Not quite. So we provide education programs in the schools, beginning in middle school, and our other programs, our support groups and our other education courses begin at 18 for individuals who are living with mental health conditions and their loved ones.
COVID exacerbated this whole mental health issue.
Absolutely.
There's not enough psychiatrists in Rhode Island. There's not enough office time in Rhode Island. There's not enough help in Rhode Island. So where does NAMI fit in that pie?
Well, we offer peer-based support for individuals who are living with mental health conditions. It doesn't have to be a formal diagnosis, so someone even who's going through perhaps situational depression or anxiety can participate. And it's not intended to be a substitute for clinical help, but it is a really good support for people while they're waiting for other help or in between visits with perhaps a psychiatrist or a therapist.
So you said, you used a key word for me, waiting.
Yes.
How long is the list?
That's a very good question, and truth be told, I don't know off the top of my head. Some people wait longer than others. It depends on whether or not you have health insurance coverage and what kind of coverage you have, and it depends what kind of services you need. The more niche area you need, obviously, the longer the wait.
So now, do doctors confide in you, or do you refer out?
Actually both. So we are referred to by a variety of providers. We try to get our name out there to any provider who we think would be appropriate, as well as people who are interacting with the family members. And we don't refer to specifics, but we will tell people how they can find providers. There are a couple of different search tools that we refer people to.
So how do you guys get funded? Are you funded through the people that you see, the way you can bill out? How does that work?
We don't bill for services, and we don't charge for services. So it's free to participate in any of our programming, and our school-based services and presentations are also free, largely from donations and our fundraising efforts. That's where most of our budget comes from.
Nothing in the state budget, nothing in the federal budget?
We do have some funding from the state. It's probably about 20% of our overall budget.
Wow. So, I mean, your organization basically is a non-for-profit organization.
Correct.
So you're eligible to get grants
Yes.
through either the state or the federal organizations.
Yes.
How long has NAMI been in existence?
More than 40 years.
Wow.
Yes.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there for about 6.
Now take me to a day that you go to a junior high. A presentation. What do you present?
What happens there?
Yeah.
So our head of our education department, her name is Penny. She goes out with 1 or 2 different volunteer speakers who tell their story of like their lived experience.
Okay.
And they present a PowerPoint presentation. Depending on the age level, that kind of gears the material.
Right.
Talks about the signs and symptoms of mental illness, how to know when you should ask for help or how to help someone else help themselves, suicide prevention, little bit of biology, a little bit of everything, really. It's like an introduction to what is mental health and mental illness.
Now, do you get folks coming, after your presentation, you get folks coming up to you and ask questions and say, you know, can you help me? Can you refer me to somewhere?
Yes, almost every time. When we're at middle schools, high schools, and colleges, almost every presentation ends with at least one student coming up to our team and talking about how that presentation inspired them to go and ask for help for themselves or someone else.
You know, that's amazing, because normally people with mental illness shy away from that kind of stuff, and it's not proactive.
Right.
You know what I mean? They don't. Sometimes it's more reactive,
Yes.
but not at that particular time.
I
you know.
think that situation, especially when we have people who are talking about their own experience, it normalizes the conversation a little bit. It brings the stigma down a little bit, and it makes that room more comfortable to talk about something like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that when you have 200 or 300 kids, it's not easy for someone to come up to you afterwards and say, you really hit the nail on the head here because I need help.
True.
More and more kids when they're in that teenage, they don't. I don't want to use the word force themselves, but bring themselves forward to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that sometimes either it gets worse for them or it gets better for them because they can call.
Yes. I think having the conversation, and we open up all of our presentations at the end for questions. Oftentimes our presenters will remind the students too that they have people in their guidance department or other trusted adults at their school who they can talk to. I think that helps too. And I think largely the age of our presenters, when we go into a middle school or a high school, we try to have the presenters who talk about their experience to be younger, college or college age students, or people who might be a little bit older but talk about what happened to them when they were at school age.
Have you ever done any programming outside the school but for a community? Like we'll use my community, Smithfield. Have you ever been to Smithfield and do a parent type presentation to them?
So we have a couple of different presentations that are geared towards different audiences. Depending upon who it is, we take the same presentation, just tailor it. So our own presentation, Inside Mental Illness, as well as Ending the Silence, which is a NAMI national product, can both be presented to groups of family members or parents or just the general community. So we have presented both of those different presentations to different audiences at perhaps community libraries, different community groups and meetings. We'll go anywhere we're invited to as long as we're available.
Is this something that has increased since COVID, or it's really leveled to a point where even before COVID you were very busy?
We were definitely very busy before COVID, but our numbers of people served spiked around mid-2020 to 2021, unsurprisingly. A lot of people were experiencing things that, of course, they hadn't before, be it just the isolation of COVID itself or being cut off from other people, but also the grief of either losing a person or experiences during that time. NAMI National had reported during COVID that the rise of their top two calls, or topic areas of those two calls rather, were anxiety and depression, where in the past it had been bipolar disorder and schizophrenia.
We're going to take a break, and I want to talk about the grief aspect of this when we come back. You're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. We'll be right back after these messages.
Now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Beth Lamar from NAMI is here in the studio today. Thank you, Beth, for coming in today. I know you're very, very busy, but thank you for taking the time out to talk about your organization with my viewers, because I think it's very important that people know that there are organizations out there to help them with a question or concern. And we've seen a lot more issues raised to the top of the water since COVID. A lot of the folks that I speak to in the schools are seeing very much bad behavior, acting out, and also it goes to the home. It goes to what's going on in the home, whether it's financial, whether it's sickness, whether it's opioid issues. It's a perfect storm right now. Perfect storm.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, you have a number of activities coming up.
We do.
May is Mental Health Month, and we're
Right.
taping right now in March, but it will air in May. So tell us about what you got going.
Well, there are a lot of activities all over the state throughout Mental Health Month. Our biggest that we're doing is a conference. It's our annual conference called Bridging the Gaps. It'll be taking place on May 30th at Crown Plaza. It's open to anyone, and the programming would appeal to individuals who might be experiencing mental health conditions, their loved ones, people who work in the field. There's something for everyone. We have breakout sessions for all different audiences.
Is there a charge to that?
There is. Registration's not yet open as of the time that this taping is taking place, so that information about the fees would be on our website when one wants to go and register. There are some scholarships available for students and individuals who work in the peer-based field.
Do you get a lot of people coming from the schools to that conference?
Probably not as many as I would like to see. We do have some folks who work in the education field who come to that conference, but it would be great if there were more, so that way they can bring that information back to students.
So you mentioned earlier that you do some work at the State House. Is there any pieces of legislation that are up there that you guys are keeping your eye on?
I would say anything that's going to support individuals who are living with mental health conditions. One of the things we're really paying attention to, though, is rate reimbursement, as I'm sure you've talked about on your show probably countless times, but it's really important to expand the network of providers, retain the ones that we do have, and pay them accordingly for the services they provide.
Yeah, that seems to be the biggest wrench in the wheel.
Yeah, I would
per se. That a lot of the psychiatrists are no longer here,
right.
moving across state lines because of the reimbursement rate. A lot of things that have to do with mental health or substance use. The workforce is way down. I don't know where they went, but they're not with us anymore. So there's a lot of things that, again, as I say earlier, it's a perfect storm on mental health and substance use end. We gotta get back to our game.
Yeah, I agree. We were one of the states that was leading the way, and that's certainly not the case anymore.
Yeah, we're going to need a backhoe to get out of the hole that we're in right now. So,
unfortunately,
obviously, funding is a key
yes.
to this whole thing. But you know, as I look at it across the state, we need to get better access to care. Whether it's South County, which we have very little access to care down there. Northern Rhode Island is another one. I've been talking to people about doing a quadrant of places where we can open up to deal with substance use and mental health, rather than having the people go into the EDs, emergency departments, and sit there for 12, 14 hours. Hasbro, 9 to 12 hours wait time. We have to nip this in the bud, and we have to do it very quickly. If not, we're going to lose more and more and more people.
Yes.
You know, the state does not like to put a shining light on suicides, but there's a lot of suicides. I mean, you hear the ones on the news, but there's a lot more you don't hear on the news.
That's true.
You know, I spoke about a month and a half ago to 250 electricians throughout the country. And every local that came to that conference lost 1 or 2 people by suicide. So we need to do a better job of maybe, and I said to them, train the trainer, utilize that, put resources up on your website so people don't have to come in the office and ask you for resources. It's already up on your website. Whether it was a substance use, mental health, or alcohol, or mental illness, the resources are the resources.
Yeah.
And again, the resources are not where they should be
I agree.
because of, obviously, funding. But if we can get that, and the General Assembly can nip that in the bud this year and get it back to where it was previously, you know, you can't go 20, 15, 20 years without a raise.
That's
No one can.
true.
And I mean, they're asking all these nonprofits to provide services for the same money they were getting 20 years ago. That doesn't work. It's a recipe for disaster. And it's, you know, we think we got problems with the Washington Bridge. We got major, major problems with healthcare in Rhode Island. You know.
Yes.
And you know, your organization is a flag leader. I'll use that as a cartoon, we'll say, to bring awareness
to mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people years ago, nobody wanted to talk about mental illness. You know,
Yeah.
but now you have to, because it's expanded throughout Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it might be your neighbor, it might be your relative, it might be your mother, it might be your father. So we need to get access to care soon.
Yes.
We cannot wait any longer.
Agreed. I mean, the statistic is 1 in 5 people is experiencing mental health condition. So it probably is more than one of the people that you just described. Maybe it's your mother and your neighbor, or your friend and yourself. And those are just the numbers that are reported.
Right.
As you just mentioned with your example about the union that you had interacted with, there are so many people who aren't talking about it. So I imagine it's probably more than 1 in 5.
You know, when I started in this business years ago, it was 1 in 5 with substance use that we've lost someone. Now we're down to 1 in 1. Everyone in that room that I was at raised their hand if we knew somebody who died of an overdose or had issues with alcohol and substances. Every one of the people raised their hand, and it's running rampant. You know, they don't know what they're taking now.
True.
If they don't get their medication from a doctor, you go to the street, you don't know what you're getting in that pill bottle. It could be the last time you ever take a pill.
That's very true.
You know, and it's not only for the younger kids. It's for our older folks too.
Yep.
Our older folks. So we're going to take another quick break.
You're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, Sean Tassoni. We'll be right back with NAMI after these messages.
Now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, Sean Tassoni. NAMI's in the house,
A nonprofit in the state of Rhode Island that we need to help out. You're having some fundraisers, so tell my viewers what you're having.
We do. We have a few different activities coming up. The first of which is for Mental Health Month. We have our annual conference, as I mentioned before, on May 30th. Sponsors can get involved in that, and anything that individuals pay all goes back into our education programs. We also, in the fall every year, we have our annual walkathons called NAMI Walks. This year it'll be on Saturday, October 12th. It takes place at Roger Williams, and that's our biggest fundraiser of the year.
Roger Williams Park or Roger Williams College?
Roger Williams Park, sorry about that. Yeah.
That's okay. Now, you have a phone number in case somebody watching this program wants to talk to someone?
Sure. We can be reached at 401-331-3060. Our office hours of operation are Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., Friday 9 to noon. And if someone calls and leaves a message outside those hours, they'll get a return phone call from whoever gets back in the office first.
Website?
NAMI Rhode Island, all spelled out, so NAMI Rhode Island, all spelled out.org.
Very good. Well, listen, thank you for coming on, Beth, and thank you for what you do. I don't see it getting any easier for me or you over the next 5 to 6 years.
No.
We need funding. We need the rates to be increased. We need people to get on the ball, because this is not going away anytime soon. We got young children. We have older adults, and everyone in between are struggling. It's a perfect storm. We need the rates increase and the funding put back into the budget so we can run the programs to help our children. So thank you again for coming on today.
Thank you.
You've been watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, Sean Tassoni. We'll see you next week.